everyone, and welcome to the webinar Company Culture Life After Lockdown. So, the purpose of today's webinar is to try and provide some certainty in an uncertain time and really give clarity and practical advice on how you can start to transition out of lockdown and what exactly that looks like. So, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Lizzie Benton, founder of Liberty Mind, and I'm incredibly passionate about company culture and the impact they have on people and organisations. I predominantly work with SMEs across the UK, helping them to change and improve their company culture in some way. So when I'm not doing that, I actually have a podcast called Make It Thrive, the Company Culture Podcast. So if you are into podcasts, then you can head on to Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts, and any other podcasting platform, and find me on there. Normally, I'm interviewing lots of experts and other businesses who've made dramatic changes to their company culture. So it's definitely worth a listen because there's a few inspirational stories that can provide some real solid lessons when it comes to company culture. If you'd like to follow me, please feel free to find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. My inbox is always open to have a conversation around company culture, so please ensure to go and find me there as well. So today we're going to cover what's happened to our company cultures since COVID-19, how our company cultures and workplace may change after the crisis, how we can manage culture changes after lockdown is lifted, and the practical things you can start doing right now to shift your culture. As I often say, I'm always enamored by motivation and inspiration, but I'm a very practical person, and I really want you to take away at least one or two things that you can really start actioning in your own company cultures and your own businesses from today. So I really do hope it's useful to you what we're going to cover today. So the big question, what's happened to our cultures since COVID-19? Obviously, without a doubt, the biggest challenge that businesses have faced is remote working. 71% of employers are struggling to adjust to remote work. That's the latest research from the Society for Human Resources as of April 2020. And I think we can all relate to this. The remote working that we've seen during this crisis is very different from the remote working that we normally see when we're implementing remote working within our company cultures. First of all, in any normal situation where we're looking to implement remote working, we go through a huge phase of testing and trialing and making sure it's right for the business and for its people. But in this situation, we've seen businesses have to literally eject people out of the business with no operations in place, zero experience of remote work, and a lot of roles that are unable to be fulfilled remotely. So the big thing as well, obviously, is that people are really juggling so much while they're remote working right now. In any normal situation, again, remote work would have its dedicated space and you'd have a dedicated environment, and a lot of the time you'd be home alone. But right now we're working alongside children, partners, loved ones. It's a very complex situation we're dealing with right now. And of course, we can't forget that not everybody can work remotely, and it's not something everybody wants to do. So it really has been a challenge on so many levels. And, you know, especially when it comes to the operation, there are people still not using project management systems, still not having communication systems in place. So there really has been a lot of teething issues when it comes to remote work. Of course, I really want to go over the difference between, office and remote, because there are positives for both. We cannot ignore that. So in an office, we have a collective energy for creativity. We can really bounce off each other, ask questions, get feedback on things much quicker than we can virtually. We can also have more impromptu interactions. Going to the kitchen to make a coffee, you perhaps bump into a colleague and have a quick chat, maybe ask them how they're doing or what they've been up to. You have impromptu interactions, maybe when you go for lunch with other colleagues that perhaps aren't in your department. So there's a lot more interconnected communication that happens within an organization, within an office space. And we can't forget that we do actually have greater access to technology. You know, one of the big things is that workspace is built for work. Our office environments are built for us to be our most productive, our most efficient. So, you know, even the Wi-Fi connection might be stronger than it is at home. And there's other things as well, like other digital tools that your workspace may have invested in that obviously you don't have at home. And without a doubt, we can't forget that communication is dramatically enhanced when we're human to human, being able to pick up on eye contact, body language. There's so many social signals that we really pick up on that we do miss massively when it comes to virtual communication. However, there is positives for remote working. Uninterrupted focus time is one of the biggest benefits to remote workers. So many remote workers say how they're able to be more productive and more efficient because they haven't got those minor interruptions that happen throughout the day where they get distracted. And of course, for those who are carers or parents, there's a greater sense of work-life balance. You know, being able to pick up the children at 3 o'clock or even to go to any kind of appointment is really important. There's a real sense of work-life balance that people gain from remote working. And one of the last points on remote working in regards to the benefits is that many people talk about more autonomy over their work. You know, not being micromanaged or watched constantly. They can actually take some ownership of their workload and also of their deadlines and objectives and manage what they work on. So there really is positives for both. And this is where we need to start looking at a strategy in order to know what we're going to do for the future. Of course, we can't ignore the elephant in the room of furlough. So more than 140,000 companies employing a total of about 1 million workers applied to the government's job furlough scheme on its first day. That's data from The Guardian. And the statistics on that have probably doubled or tripled since then. But obviously the data is taking its time to catch up. So there is a massive amount of us who are furloughed at the moment. And this brings with it its own issues. So one of the big things I've been talking to businesses about over the past few months is people feeling disconnected from the business. Furlough's great because people can, you know, feel safe that they're at home and financially stable. But the big feeling is that disengagement because they're not in the business and enacting their role. There is this sense of disconnection that can be quite troubling. Also, people have time to reflect on their roles and the company they work for. You know, we do very well at sitting at home and overthinking things, and we've got lots of time on our hands. And one thing we're definitely going to do is think about our roles, if we're happy in the company we work for. So, you know, it really is one of those things where people might be deciding to maybe exit. And of course, maintaining communication between people and the business has to continue, even when people are on furlough, because you really want to ensure that that transition, when we go back into some kind of normal, is much easier for those people and for the business. So there is a lot of emotion around furlough. And one of the biggest things that I've definitely had conversations with people recently is actually fear of job safety. Some people are wondering, well, if I'm on furlough, does that mean when we go back to normal, in quotes, I'm going to maybe lose my job or made redundant or asked to cut down my hours? There's a lot of financial uncertainty around that. So that's a big concern for people as well. Productivity, without a doubt, has been a challenge. 1/3 of businesses are facing difficulties with productivity. That's data from the Society for Human Resources. And again, this just isn't a surprise. You know, we have to face the fact that we are in a crisis state. We haven't experienced anything like this in our lifetime since World War II. And it really is an unusual situation to be in. You know, business operations have been slow to adapt, which means getting projects going, keeping communication going has been very slow for companies, which has dramatically, affected their productivity. Of course, the other part of this is that the workspace is not ideal for remote working. Working from home doesn't mean we've all got a luxury home office waiting for us to work in. Many of us are actually working from the kitchen table while also trying to homeschool children. So it's not an ideal environment for productivity. And of course, because communication lines haven't been clearly identified by a lot of businesses, there is a lot of miscommunication happening. People feeling like they're missing out on lots of things, projects slowing down and things like that. So it really has stifled productivity over the past month or so. And I think many of us are seeing that. Morale obviously is a huge one in regards to our productivity and the situation that we're in. I mean, I think even the best of us have felt challenged by this experience, being disconnected and away from loved ones and not being able to do the things that we can normally do. Rethink Mental Illness found that 80% of people felt their mental health was worse due to the impact of the coronavirus, with 28% indicating that it was much worse. And it's true, right now, there's little support for people with any kind of mental health condition, let alone those who are already sort of struggling with the situation itself. And even in our healthcare system, we're very slow at supporting those with mental health conditions. So our businesses are even slower to adapt, and we actually need to really embrace this as a business, as a company culture, looking at mental well-being, especially during this time. And of course, people are feeling isolated, lonely, separated. We tend to think of loneliness as something that only the elderly get, but actually it doesn't discriminate. Loneliness can affect absolutely anybody. Even your youngest team member might be feeling lonely right now, especially if they live on their own or they're separated from their family. So let's not forget that this is in some way mentally affecting all of us. And last but not least, there is financial worry as a contributing factor, because there's lots of words. The word recession is being bandied about a lot right now, but that does make people scared and fearful and worry about finances. So financial worry and financially stimulated stress will be happening right now, because people will be wondering how they're going to be able to cover rent, mortgage, lots of other heavy bills that might be going on in their lives. So we really have to look at it from a very holistic point of view when it comes to well-being, on how it's massively disrupted the landscape of our company cultures. So moving on then, how will things change post-COVID-19? That's the big question we're all asking right now, especially as rumours that the lockdown in the UK is going to be eased this weekend. So we really need to tap into what might happen. So remote and flexible working will definitely increase. I think if you're a betting man, then we would have definitely all won on that one. Because let's be honest, people don't want to go back to the old way of work. The rat race, as it's so often called, is not actually serving us very well. It's pushing us towards burnout. It's not supporting those who've got mental health conditions. It's not enabling us to create a more diverse workforce. So it just doesn't work. The structure that we do everything by now, right now, or how we used to do things, is not going to serve us in the future we're going into. So you will see flexible working proposals increase. And I think flexible office spaces will increase as well, because people will start to question, do we really need a huge office? Why have we got this really expensive office? And if we are going to have an office, what purpose is it serving to us? Why do we need this space? What's it going to help us achieve? You know, and the big thing I always hear, you know, is, oh, we can't do flexible working or remote working because of our sector or our industry. And that is the oldest excuse in the book. I know of many businesses who are remote and flexible working that are in a variety of industries. I'm talking automotive industry, I'm talking call centres, I'm talking restaurants doing 4-day weeks. There is so much out there of people adapting the way they already work. You know, the Scandinavians and the Dutch are way ahead of us in this area. And for some reason in the UK, we are still so behind and so backwards and outdated in our approach. And we tend to think of those, you know, when we hear of other countries doing it, we're kind of like, oh, it's some kind of utopia, you know, haven where everything is so perfect. No, you know, there's actually companies in this country, in the UK, changing and adapting their working practices. You just need to find them in your industry, because they are doing it. The healthcare system, you know, healthcare companies, sorry. So there's so much. And I think right now, one of the best things you can do is start researching around what kind of strategy or model will work for your business. And of course, a huge area around remote and flexible working is keeping that culture alive for those who are remote, because I have seen personally that a lot of businesses who already have a strong company culture have adapted much more successfully to remote working than those that perhaps didn't have as strong a culture. So I would highly recommend you start to look at your culture and really start to question what you're doing and why you are doing it. Virtual leadership will become a new challenge. Let's be honest, if you've got a remote working team and they're all virtual, then how do you manage and lead those people when you're not in a physical environment? So managing and leading people virtually will become a required skill. It will be an absolute necessity in order to effectively manage people that are remote working. You know, as a leader, you're going to have to now grapple with being seen and engaging, supporting and trusting, but through virtual means. So this doesn't mean you can micromanage. This means you need to start actually being seriously effective, asking people what their frustrations are. How can I help? That's what you need to be. You need to be in service to your team. Like I covered previously with the big furlough issue, you know, more people will exit. That is without a doubt. You know, back in 2008, 2009, when the recession hit, there was a huge increase in people starting, you know, new businesses or going freelance, because job security wasn't as certain anymore. You know, people were getting made redundant, businesses were closing. So people took their livelihood into their own hands. And I think this will happen again. And, you know, it's one of those things where people have this time to sit and reflect and consider their life choices and think about, oh, actually, I don't want things to go back to the way they were. So how can I change my lifestyle? And a big part of that is their careers. So people will look to change their careers or switch companies entirely. So keeping people engaged and motivated in your existing culture will be a top challenge, because people won't see it as a safe haven anymore unless you're making that clear to them. So really do think about what you're doing right now to nurture those people who are in furlough and support them. Without a doubt, I think more meaning will enter into the workplace. We have this really bad habit of wearing a mask when we come into the workplace, of leaving life at the door and pretending life doesn't exist when we enter the workplace. But this just cannot go on any longer. We need to realize that people actually do have loved ones and other responsibilities aside from work. And I think more organisations will start to support this work-life balance idea, because they want to keep talented people. And, you know, the way they're going to do that is ensuring that flexible and remote working and other culture strategies are really helping those people feel like they're getting that work-life balance. And I think, one of the things that I've seen a lot on LinkedIn recently is, it's quite entertaining, but people saying how a Zoom call or a conference call has been disrupted by a child walking in. And I think that genuinely makes us all very aware that work is not the only thing in our lives. We have children, we have partners, we have loved ones. And I think that's going to help us have these deeper connections and more meaningful relationships in the workplace. And above all, we're really going to crave that human to human contact. I know I'm certainly missing the energy of other people. I really thrive off working with people in groups and in teams and individuals. And right now, one thing I'm definitely missing is that energy and that ability to be in the same room as someone. So we are going to crave human to human contact, and it will become so much more meaningful to us. Now, you might think I'm biased, but I think culture drive will increase. So I think a big area many organizations and businesses are going to look at is their company culture. And I mean this in such a holistic way. For a long time, a lot of businesses and organizations have just done box ticking exercises where it's like, oh, we need to do some well-being. Let's tick that box. No, culture, is your behavior, what you say and what you do. And right now, people will remember how you reacted in this time and how you supported. Even in our personal lives, when something bad happens, we remember those friends or relatives that really step up and show up, and we remember those people who we couldn't find. So just bear that in mind, that how you have reacted and how you've supported your team during this time will have ripple effects on your company culture long after this is over. So it's really important, because throughout this, every company should have been driven by its purpose and its values. That's what's at the core of every culture. And let's be honest, this will have all been put to the test during coronavirus, because businesses behaving badly are all over the media and people are quick to out them. So it'll be a very interesting revelation once we come out this of exactly who's fared well and who's fared not so well. Of course, well-being and safety will be a priority. And I don't just mean this in regards to mental well-being. I know there are many businesses right now who are looking at strategies and ways they can support their team with mental health, because that has become a prominent issue. So I've talked to a lot of businesses recently about mental health and mental well-being, because that seems to have been probably one of the most biggest factors that they're trying to react to. So that is definitely a priority. But if lockdown is eased on Sunday, giving people confidence to return to the workplace will need some kind of strategy, because not everyone may want to come back to work straight away. We really need to think about those who are going to be nervous about that, and who maybe still have vulnerable loved ones at home who don't want to infect them, because we keep thinking that vulnerable is the elderly. We keep thinking that's who's going to be affected, but actually there's people with long-term health conditions who can also be seriously affected by coronavirus. So there are going to be people with long-term health conditions in families, and those people are not going to want to put their family members at risk. And it's really hard to imagine, especially if you haven't personally been affected by coronavirus or know anybody in your family or friends who's been affected, to realize the actual severity of the situation, because we're all quite detached. We're sat in our lovely cozy homes, all very safe and happy, But there are people who have lost loved ones, and we must realize that. Support will need to be provided for those who've been severely affected by the coronavirus. And that is grief management. And that is a whole different strategy that you will have to consider. So just what is the new normal? I keep seeing this hashtag everywhere, new normal, new normal, new normal. Whether we're going to live up to this new normal is up for debate, but let's see if we can. I think before we do any changes, we really must change our mindset. So as I said, I work in culture change, and it very much of the time is a state of mind for these businesses who are changing or improving. And we mustn't forget that a lot of the time change comes from a positive or a negative place. Either we've incurred some kind of pain, so we realize we need to change something, or we see how it could be done and think, I want to try and achieve that. So what we really need to do right now is look at this change, because change is one of those things that scares people. It incites a lot of fear into people, and it can be a big trigger, a massive trigger. But what we have to do is change our mindset. We have to see this as an exciting time, an embracive time to start changing things out of the old and outdated and into the new, the exciting, the more productive, the more efficient, making work for us. So what I really want you to remember is look at what works rather than what's always been done. Really try your best to forget how you've done it previously, and just have an open mind about how you could become more agile. You know, some things in your business are no longer going to be fit for purpose, and try as you might to keep hold of those, they will no longer serve you in this new era we're going into. So it really is time to adapt and be curious about what's coming up. And I think we all need to really remember to be more responsive rather than reactive. We've all reacted to this, let's be honest, but actually now we need to step back and really assess the situation and think of how we want to come out of this. So I really wanted to cover some of the big changes we will see in the world, because these will also have an impact on your people and your business, which essentially means your culture. So these are some of the big things that have been predicted or expected to make changes in our world. So number one is a big rise in online and digital businesses. This is obvious. I've already seen businesses adapting or changing their services or looking at how they can diversify, because a lot of them are saying, I never want to go through this again. So how can I ensure that my business has a diverse amount of services so that we can operate no matter what the world throws at us? So it really is a fantastic mindset to be in, because actually you look at growth and you see growth in new areas you might not have done previously. The second is people are planning more short-term rather than long-term. I think we can all hold our hands up and probably say that we've all had some kind of life event cancelled, whether that's weddings or holidays. So we're all a little bit nervous about planning for things in the long-term future. Instead, we're just trying to get through each day, each week, each month, bit by bit. So we've gone to a much more short-term thinking rather than long-term. And it's important that you maybe start doing this too with your culture strategy, looking at some of the short-term changes you can make, and then look at a long-term strategy of where you eventually want to take it. A big thing we are seeing is people investing in self-knowledge. So again, there's lots of people at home, furloughed, bored. What are they going to do? Oh, I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to jump on a new course. I'm going to jump on an online course. So The rise in people investing in self-knowledge is huge. It has skyrocketed during coronavirus with everyone being at home. And this will only continue because people will also think, oh, well, if I can do that online course and do that online course, maybe I can just work for myself. So definitely when it comes to engaging people, their learning and development in your company culture is going to become so important. So it's really essential that you consider that in your company culture strategy, that this thirst for knowledge must be quenched by your company culture. And last but not least is prevention planning. We don't know what the prevention methods are going to be. And, you know, like I said, there's rumors lockdown is going to be eased, but we don't know what that's going to look like and how that's going to change our workplace. We might have to do shift work for a while with only a certain amount of people in a business. You know, there's so much expectation and prediction, and we really don't know the guarantees around what the prevention is. And we must remember that big changes like this do massively change things in our life and in our work. I mean, one very simple example is the terrorist attack on the Twin Towers. You know, that was a dramatic attack on the world, and let's be honest, it changed the way we go on holiday. It changed the way we get on an airplane and we queue up in the airport. So you have to accept right now that coronavirus is going to change something in our world. We really have to come to an acceptance, and rather than trying to push against it, we need to accept it, embrace it, and take it forward with curiosity at how we can use it positively in our company culture. So how can we manage these big culture changes that we're going to see after coronavirus? Like I said, I really wanted to give you guys some practical and actionable steps that you can start doing straight away. So here's what I've come up with. Honestly, I could have made this webinar like an hour and a half long because there is so much I wanted to cover. But like I said, at the start, you know, if there is any questions that you have, or you'd really like to pick my brain about something that I've said, then please do email me, and I would love to have a phone call with you about any of these things that have come up, because I know some of these things might have triggered even more questions than you started with. So let's go on. Number one, the number one thing I really recommend you do right now is start auditing your working operations. Flexible and remote working is going to be the new reality. This does not mean to say that remote working is going to become our new norm. Yes, I think it's going to increase without a doubt, but remote working doesn't work for everyone. We have to stop seeing it as this quick fix, as this 2020 was the year everyone went remote. No, it won't be, trust me. People still love working in an office, and a lot of us need to work in an office. So really look at the short term as well as the long term. For example, the short term is probably going to be related to the easing of lockdown. So this might be, there can only be X amount of people at home and X amount of people in the office at one time. So you might have to come up with a short-term strategy just while the coronavirus gets managed. But it's important to look at a long-term strategy. So what do you want to do eventually? Maybe, you know, cutting the working hours and the working week is the way forward, because let's be honest, a lot of the time we don't need to work 5 days a week. We are just keeping ourselves busy. We are busy fools. It's not productive, it's not efficient, and a lot of the results that we feel we can achieve in a week, we normally finish by a Thursday. So I really recommend you massively assess how you're working right now, because this isn't going to be just a quick fix. This is going to change things. And like I said, it's really important you focus on your culture, because those with stronger cultures really do see the highest rate of success. But 3 things you can do right now for your remote workers. I would say is create a really good handbook. So this should be the how-to guide for everything your team may need when they're remote working. It should outline different lines of communication and their purpose, for example, video calls, project meetings, phone calls, wellbeing check-ins. You know, really ensure people know what channel to use for what reason. And the other thing it should cover is things like what happens if their Wi-Fi goes down. How should they report that to you, and what happens? You know, is there any particular expectations when they're on a client phone call or a video call? You know, is there a dress code, for example? Is there certain confidentiality you have to put in place for people remote working because they're remote working maybe with their partners, things like that. So really think about this handbook, and I beg of you to make this interesting. Please do not put this in a Word document that is going to bore everybody to tears. The amount of handbooks I see that are in black and white Word documents make me want to pull my eyes out. So please get this designed, branded, make it engaging, make it so people actually want to read it and consume it. Have some fun, really put your brand values and your vision in there, and put it out there, put it, you know, on an online portal or in a really nicely designed mini book. Just make it way more interesting, because if you want people to actually engage with it, then at least make the effort to make it engaging. Okay, off my soapbox. Number 2 is outline clear goals and objectives. A big reason why remote working doesn't sometimes work is because you're not clear with what you want your team to achieve within that week or within that day. Right now, you need to be realistic with these goals, because like we've seen at the beginning of this webinar, people are working in unusual circumstances. So this isn't a time to be setting ridiculous goals to try and see if remote working works for your business. It's not the environment to do that in. So outline clear goals and objectives and make sure they are realistic. That's the big part of it as well. The third part of this is conduct regular employee surveys around remote working. So the reason I say regular and rather than like once a month is because there are so many challenges that come with remote working. The environment people are working in, communication channels, you know, if project management tools aren't set up properly. So there's so many frustrations that can happen, and it's really important you continuously tap into how your team are feeling and what things are niggling them at the moment. And whatever you do, don't go and invest in some expensive employee survey tool right now and just go and spend all your money thinking that's going to solve all your problems. Before you do that, use free tools like SurveyMonkey or Google Forms, because what you need to do is figure out if people are actually going to fill them in, first of all, and if it's going to give you the information you need. Until then, don't go, you know, bull in a china shop trying to invest in all these bits of software and tools. Generally, in a business, that's one of the biggest wastes of money I actually see is, you know, businesses have got all these fancy bits of software and a lot of people don't know how to use them and they're not effective and they haven't actually mapped out the process to begin with. So do yourself a favor and send employee surveys by SurveyMonkey or Google Forms first. If you're finding them really valuable and you want more data or more insights, then I would recommend you invest in a really good survey tool. Number 2 is engage with your team and understand what their biggest worries and frustrations are. Your role right now as a business is to serve your team and your customers, and you need to talk to them. So don't just send surveys, you know, get on the phone with them. Ask them, how are you feeling? What's annoying you right now? What's frustrating you? Talk to them and really gauge an idea of the things that are frustrating them. And from this, you know, have conversations about problems or challenges the business is having, because you don't know what solution your team could come up with. We have this general idea that as leaders, we always have to be in the driving seat. And yes, we do, but sometimes it's really good to go to the back of the bus and know what the view looks like from there. So really ask them, because they are going to be able to help you come up with the solution, and vice versa. So now is the time to really have some good conversations with your team. Number 3 is to make small culture changes first and discover your quick wins. What change or improvement could you make today that would have a good impact? So this is a bit of homework for you. You know, I really want you to think about these quick wins. What could you do today, this week, that will make a massive difference to your team or your company culture? Is it getting a mental health coach to give everyone a call and give everyone a session? Is it sending everyone some lunch money so they can treat themselves to a lunch where they don't have to cook? They can actually get something delivered to them that would be really nice. Just think about what you could make a change at that would make a really big difference. There are so many things you can do. And like I said, if you want to have a conversation about this, I am more than happy to. Number 4 is to begin to build a strategy for this new reality we'll experience in the world. So like I said, that there are going to be some big changes. The thing is, it is going to change all of our businesses in some way. We have to accept that. But ignoring it is the worst thing. What we have to do instead is get together with our team, brainstorm about actually, how could this impact our customers? How does this impact the way we operate, our services, our products? You know, actually sit there and just kind of have a bit of a prediction, you know, have some fun thinking, oh, what if this happens? And what if that happens? Because that can really help you understand exactly how it's going to impact your business. The one thing we don't like about change is the unknown. When things a lot of the time change, we don't know what's going to happen. Our brains don't think like that. We can only take in what is happening right now. So the unknown is the absolute worst for us. It creates fear, it creates uncertainty, we get a little bit wobbly. But actually, when we can sit and predict and even challenge what might happen, you know, plan for the worst, as they say, we can then take back control and plan and navigate those things rather than let it consume us and take it away with us. So massively sit down with your team and really have a good conversation about how this may change things and make it positive. Don't come from a negative. That's what I'm trying to say, is really see it as an exciting. How is this going to challenge us? How is this going to make us do things differently? Pose those questions rather than, what if we lose all our customers? Pose it with some really challenging and insightful questions. Number 5 is be transparent with your team. People value honesty right now. What they don't want to see is a leader pretending everything is absolutely fine when the world is falling down behind them. We're all seeing a challenge right now. No matter who you are, in what role, there is some challenge you will be facing. So don't pretend that everything's okay. Be honest, be authentic. Let's start taking down that mask and opening up the conversation. We are all human. So really be honest with your team about where things are with the business and where things might be going, because you might be surprised at how encouraged and excited they are by it. So just think about your communication. Are you being really open with your team? Because let's face it, that's what you want from your team. You want them to be telling you when problems happen, or telling you solutions, or telling you when something's not going right, and being honest and trustworthy. So, you know, do that back. You need to lead, you know, you need to be seen as acting and behaving in the way you want your team to act and behave. Number 6 is don't copycat. So it's going to be really easy right now just to see other people doing good things and think, oh, we should do that too in our company culture. Now is the time to behave and act under your mission and your values. Don't just try and tag something into your company culture and hope it will work. There is a reason why businesses adopt things. It's because they've asked the big why. Why are we doing this? You can't just add in a work perk or something else. You've really got to have a considered approach. You know, if your mission and values are no longer relevant, perhaps it's time to change these. Maybe they were created 10 years ago and they're not going to be relevant for the world we're going into. So I've covered some actions about how we can manage the big changes, but a big thing I know many businesses struggle with is how can you build a stronger company culture? Because the stronger your company culture, the more agile and adaptable it can be in times like this. There is so much data around this, it makes my head hurt. So really now is the time more than ever to be looking at your culture. So like I've said throughout this webinar, get people involved. Stop seeing the divide of them and us. You're all in it. You are all in it. You're all in the ship. So you need to have some conversations and feedback about what to start doing. As I've mentioned, always ask why. Why are you doing something? Why are you adopting that work perk? Why have you decided to take on that learning and development program? Really ask why, get to the deep why of it. Like I said, be transparent throughout all of your communication, especially at this time. Be open and clear with your team. Be open to feedback as well, because nothing is going to work perfectly right now. You know, we're all going to go through a bit of a test and trial phase as we come out of this, and some things might not work. Just be open to that. Don't think everything needs to be a polished, perfect strategy. Just start moving forward. That's my biggest advice. Now, for those of you that follow my work, you'll know that I take a very holistic approach to company culture. I get fed up of the amount of times people think it's just the fun work perks when it really isn't. It is so much more than that. So the 9 elements of company culture help you to identify the key areas of company culture that you need to work in to ensure that your company culture is really streamlined and strong. So we always start with vision and values. You know, what is the mission and vision of your business, and what are the values you expect people to live by to achieve that mission? So what I would recommend is you screenshot this slide and go through each of these elements and rate yourself, or your business should I say, from 0 to 10. 0 being, oh, we haven't even looked at this. 10 being, we've got this totally sorted. So really go through and be very honest and rate yourself, because this will give you a really clear idea of where you need to start working. What I recommend is start with the area that's quite high. So it's not a 10, but maybe it's a 7 or an 8. That gives you an idea of actually, we could make a small change to this and it would be much better. That's your quick win generally. The ones on the much lower end of the scale, they're your big project areas for your company culture right now. So they're the areas where you're like, wow, we definitely need to do some work. And that will basically help create your path to starting your company culture changes. So really look at these elements and be honest with where these are at, because they will start guiding you in the right direction. So change really does happen. People, the world, technology, things are happening fast. With this virus, obviously, this was something, let's be honest, we probably could have expected it. I've got clients who have Chinese customers, and when this broke out in China, their business was dramatically impacted because they had a huge Chinese market. And I remember them saying to me at Christmas, this is coming to the UK. This is definitely coming to the UK. But we were really ignoring it here in the UK, massively ignoring it, pretending it was just a flu. When what we really should have been doing is looking at the situation and starting to make some responsible and responsive decisions rather than reacting in the way that we have. Because let's be honest, I think we can all admit we've reacted to this situation rather than responded to it. And I think it's a big lesson we can take into the future, because there will be more changes to come. And I'm sorry if this triggers you. You know, even this coronavirus, we may not have seen the end of it. This might just be one episode in a season of coronavirus situations. So we really need to start changing without a doubt and adapting. So I suppose that's just food for thought more than anything. So just to summarize, for those of you who have attended the webinar, there is a free ebook for all of you that I will be sending, how to build the company culture you really want. So this book goes through those 9 elements in much more detail, and it also gives you inspiration, tasks and steps to start taking and assessing your company culture journey. You can also download it on the Liberty Mind website, and if you just go onto the resources section, you will see it there for you to download. And for those of you who really want to be guided in making changes, I'm running a 5-day culture change program in July. So it begins on Monday, the 27th of July. This is just 1 hour every day of having sessions with me in a group session to help you get to grips with those 9 core areas, specifically with your company culture, and to start actually managing some of those changes and strategizing. So you're going to learn way more about those 9 core elements, and you're going to be able to actually learn how to start mapping your culture changes and create a strategy that's actually going to be successful. So feel free to look at the link on Eventbrite. And for those of you who've attended the webinar, I will email you that link as well. So it'd be great to see some of you on that, because there's a lot of change happening, and I know a little bit of guidance and advice along the way and some experience might just help that transition be a little easier for all of you. So there are a few questions that I will briefly cover that you guys have sent in. So I will go through these, and if you do have any more questions, please feel free, like I said, just to drop me an email and we can always have a chat. So one of the first questions is, what will networking events look like in the future? So this is a really good question, because yeah, so many of them have been in physical environments, but personally I've seen some great digital networking events going on right now. So it might be worthwhile looking at a digital format just until we get to a place where we can be in a physical environment together. I don't think networking is going to go completely digital. I personally, as a business owner, prefer face-to-face conversations, getting to know people, and I feel you can do this much better in a physical, human-to-human sense than you can digitally. Plus, you know, we're doing so much digital conversation right now that it's very overwhelming. You know, we have to heighten ourselves so much in order to do anything digitally. And the second question, keeping our current positive company culture alive with more staff wanting to work remotely. Yes, that is a really good question. The big thing to do is really start looking at your current company culture, what you're doing, and how that can be adapted into remote working. I've done a few blog posts on the Liberty Mind website around remote working cultures, so I would definitely recommend you view those, because there's some fun ideas in there of how you can keep especially team building activities going on throughout this time. So definitely head over there, because there's things like one company are getting local artists to do live gigs via Zoom for their team, which is great because the team get to watch a live gig. The local artist gets paid because they've obviously got no work at the moment. And the business has a unique way of keeping everybody entertained and encouraged and motivated, you know, gives everyone something to talk about rather than just coronavirus. So there are some really mixed ideas in there. So definitely give those blogs a look. Third question, physical connections. How will we maintain our spirits for such a long period of time? Absolutely, because I think lockdown has really challenged all of us, hasn't it? I mean, I've certainly felt very disconnected from my family and really missed them. And keeping your spirits high at a time like this is difficult, especially when there's so much change. You know, it's not just one area of our life that has changed, it is every single area. So keeping our spirits alive is really important. Like I said, morale and well-being, supporting each other and having those well-being check-ins is really important. And having that third party support, so whether that is like a mental health coach supporting your team right now, or even a buddy up system where people can be buddied up so they check in on each other with a phone call or something, just to make sure everything's okay. The fourth question is more of a statement than a question. It says, policy for flexible working, work from home is outdated. Oh gosh, isn't it just? But isn't everything we've got right now way outdated? I mean, you know, the current work system that we have was built in the 1800s, so it's really no surprise to me that we're very outdated in the UK. But honestly, it's going to take some time for them to catch up. It really is. Our government isn't innovative enough to keep up with the way the world needs to work. And what we have to do is actually take the responsibility on as a business to adapt and not rely on the government. There are rules and regulations and, you know, legalities you might have to consider. But honestly, there are so many businesses already in the UK working to a 4-day week or a 6-hour day or other remote flexible working patterns. So really, the big question is, how do you want to change your business? How do you want everybody to feel, and how do you want work to be created? So I'm going to put that back with another question. And the fifth one is, how effective will it be to conduct team building virtually rather than in person? Very, very good question, and a big challenge for lots of businesses right now who have remote working teams. How do you keep people on virtual team buildings? And there are so many ways you can do this. You know, creating a social events calendar is really good by hosting lots of different events. But one of the things I would really do, especially in this area, is look at what people value the most, because there's just no point adding some crazy event, remote work event, for people not to enjoy it or want to attend. Plus, you've got to remember that remote work, as it is, they're not going to have loads of time to be on these activities or these virtual team buildings. So you've maybe got a maximum of an hour before people start getting a bit bored, a bit lost. So definitely think about, what do your team value? What kind of experiences as individuals, what do they enjoy? Start thinking about things that are perhaps a little bit different. You know, really, where there's a will, there's a way. And it's ultimately down to your creativity to think of something exciting. But also ask your team, like I've said throughout this, get feedback. What would they love to have incorporated into their virtual team building? So those were the pre-questions I had sent in. Thank you all of you so much for attending this webinar. And I really, for those who are on the recording, I am so sorry that you've missed out on this. Unfortunately, we seem to have had some serious technical issues between Zoom and Eventbrite, which a few of you have reported. So I really do appreciate you for letting me know that, because we will need to contact them about that. So I just want to say thank you once again. It's been an absolute pleasure to do this webinar, and I really appreciate everybody giving up your time. Like I said at the start, you know, if you would like to have a phone call about any of these areas, please do just drop me an email, as I would love to chat more in depth. But thank you again, and really enjoy and stay safe during your bank holiday weekend.